Hi guys, so today we're gonna check out Dorian Develops, and the video is about how you would learn how to code if you could start over in 2025, which I usually don't agree with what people say, if they could start over. I think people don't count with a lot of things that they should. Hopefully it's a good video. It's 25-minute video though, we'll see.
The very first thing that I would do is I would spend as little time as possible learning the basics, because I think what happens is
I don't think you need to spend too much time learning the basics. I think you need to understand what like a variable is, what an if statement is, and a loop, and not much more than this to start with and to actually explore. So I think that's not a bad advice at all. I actually think it's pretty good. Depends on where he goes with this, obviously, and so on. But overall, actually, I would say that you should not spend too much time with basics, because first off, they don't take too much time to understand, and then you should just go and experiment with stuff, to be honest.
that too many of us spend way too much time learning the basics and learning too much theory and not putting anything into practice, because we feel that we need to take in as much information as possible in order for us to feel ready to start actually coding. Instead of spending weeks on beginner courses that just teach you things like syntax, learn the bare minimum that you need to.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. Again, syntax is not important because you just learn it over time, and depending on the language, it really doesn't matter. Later on, like right now, I don't code in Python or JavaScript or many other languages, but if I need to, I can do it within a day. It's not hard at all, and with AI, it's even easier. Like if you know how to code in a different language, you can just code it in that language and ask ChatGPT and so on to just translate it.
Get something to work. Every time you need a new concept like loops or functions, learn it in context of what you're building. Try to practice the 80-20 rule. Learn 20% of the things that you will use 80% of the time. This means that learning one basic HTML course, one basic CSS course, and one basic JavaScript course should be all you need to start building. And as you start coming across things that you need to implement and do as you're building, go back and refer to documentation on the things that you're trying to do. You don't need to learn every single HTML tag. You don't need to learn every single CSS style. You don't need to learn every...
I still don't know most of these things nowadays. I use C# on a daily basis for 4 years, and I still don't know plenty of things that exist within C# just because I don't use them. And at some point I'll find out about them, and if I ever need, I'll start using them. That's kind of like how things go. I totally agree with this. Yeah, 100%.
Every single JavaScript helper function. Just learn the basics and start building. Once you start working with JavaScript, all you need is variables, functions, loops, and conditionals to build pretty...
Yep. Like I said, conditionals is if statements, pretty much loops and variables. Just like I said before, this makes total sense. I agree with 100%. I'm actually surprised because usually when I watch this kind of videos, they are not at all like this. So yeah, I'm actually quite surprised about this video so far.
Much anything. Learn about data structures and algorithms when you actually need to use them. Don't spend a whole time learning that stuff and grinding LeetCode if you can't even build.
The thing is, at the start, if you don't even know how to code or anything like that, like all these things that you're studying, that you're trying to learn, they don't even make sense. It maybe takes 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours for you to understand the concept, while later on, if you already know how to code, those concepts will come within, like minutes. You'll just understand them without much, like thought into it. So you're just wasting time at this point if you try to learn all these things at once in the start, because first off, you don't understand them like as easy as you will later on, and you don't need them anyway. So yeah,
a project from scratch, and don't waste time on computer science theory until it becomes relevant. Another thing is, don't get stuck in preparation mode, or what I like to call productive procrastination mode. Many beginners spend a whole lot of time trying to get ready to learn how to code. The truth is that even senior level developers Google everything, and now we AI everything. But I just wanted to mention that you can go out and find the answer rather than having to learn the answer before you need to use it. Aim to get to hello world in 1 hour. And if that's hard to understand, hello world is the first thing that everybody prints out when they learn a new programming language. And what I'm trying to say is get to learning how to do the simplest thing first as soon as possible. It doesn't have to be in an hour, but try to think of it that way. Start by actually writing code in your first learning session. Don't just watch a bunch of videos on HTML or CSS or JavaScript without actually writing any code. Don't read a bunch of books without writing any code. Don't research a whole bunch of stuff without actually writing any code. Start writing code right away. If you're learning HTML and CSS, this is pretty easy. Once you get to the programming language aspect, try to start printing stuff out in your console or your REPL. These early wins will help you.
I don't really agree with using console apps and so on. I rather use something else for starting, but that's me. The way that I would start it, I need a button to click. It's important for me to have a button click as an action and do things with that button. But yes, I agree 100% that you should just go ahead and experiment with things and, try it out, like change things in the code and just see what it does pretty much.
Build momentum and encourage you to continue to keep learning. The next major bullet point on my list is going to be focus on one tech stack. Now, this can be tricky for a lot of new beginners because you really don't know what tech stack you should learn. I always suggest trying to do some market research in the job market that you're trying to apply in. So this means go on LinkedIn, go on.
At this point, I don't think that you are already trying to find a job as in, oh yeah, I would love to do that. Because if you go for a company, it's like if you want to work at Google right away, then sure. I'm not sure how good that's going to be to, aim that high. But sure, then you can try to start with whatever tech stack they have. But in general, I think it's very important that you choose the correct language at start. And there are languages that are nicer for you to learn. And I don't think usually it's the ones that people tend to say, like Python, JavaScript, and so on. I think C# is very good as a starting language, and it's not so much about C#, but about Visual Studio. But then again, it would depend if you use Windows as an example or not, because if you don't use Windows, then you probably should go with something else, because what I'm about to say is about Visual Studio itself, not Visual Studio Code, the blue one, but the purple one, Visual Studio as an IDE. It's a very powerful tool, and it's very helpful at start. C# is a compiled language, and you won't be losing hours trying to fix issues that have nothing to do with the logic behind your code at all. It's like misspelling something and stuff like that. Many languages will allow you to run your code even when it's misspelled. And C#, Visual Studio and so on don't allow this, which is a benefit. And it shows right away where the issue is. And it also has already so many things included with the package that you can just start right away, like with WinForms and so on, drag and drop, UI elements in which you can have buttons and so on. And it's a one thing that you need to install pretty much, and it brings everything that you need. That's why for me it's very important that if I would start learning nowadays, I would go with C# and Visual Studio, because the combo is very, very powerful and it allows you to just go bug free for a very long time, pretty much. Not kill your mood when you're trying to learn something, because you can have like 100,000 problems that have nothing to do with your code. You'll quit before you even start coding, if that makes sense.
Indeed, go on DICE and check your area for the programming languages and the tech stacks that are in high demand. If you're learning web development, you could learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and then go with the whole MERN stack and learn MongoDB and Express and Node.js for your backend.
But you see, the amount of things that he said there is just so many things. For a beginner, it's like, okay, you need to install 20,000 things and understand what every single part of these things is doing. While if you go with C#, WinForms kind of thing, it's like, you just learn the logic behind it and nothing else. It's like you start coding right away. And I think that's a benefit as a beginner.
A route that many people often take, but I don't always suggest learning that tech stack because it's honestly not in very high demand. But regardless of the tech stack that you pick, you should just stick with the one that you decide to learn from the start and stick with it for a while. As long as the tech stack that you choose is stable, you're gonna be all right. If you're focusing on front-end development, JavaScript and React is usually a safe bet. And if you want to learn full stack, then do some research on the back-end language and the framework that you want to use. Try to commit to at least 6 months of learning this tech stack. I know that might scare a bunch of people away right there. Like,
You mean I really got to spend all of this time learning? Like 6 months is a long time.
yeah, this stuff is hard and you're not gonna learn it in 3 months. No matter what any boot camp tells you or whatever tech influencer tells you that you can learn this stuff fast, the truth is that it takes a while. And I think that 6 months is a reasonable amount of time to dedicate to a specific stack. This gives you enough time to reach real proficiency and understand the framework, and it helps you push through that initial learning curve. And whatever you do, don't jump ship as soon as things get difficult. It's gonna be hard. Just push through, persevere, and try to really understand the tech stack that you wanna learn. Then try to master the ecosystem around it. Learn the common tools and libraries that that tech stack uses. Learn how to test in that tech stack. Make sure that you get comfortable with the package manager that you'll be using and learn the best practices and patterns of the tech stack.
The thing is, I've been with plenty of companies and so on. They just love to ask you about testing, but when you actually start working with them, they have no testing set up. They have no pipeline set up. They don't have any of the things that they're actually asking set up, at least not properly. Many times it's like they have one project actually with tests and so on, but everything else doesn't have tests. And you end up, being like, okay, I'm going to study tests, but they don't do it. Many companies don't do this kind of stuff, even though they ask on the job descriptions and stuff like that. But so many times you end up actually getting a job, and what it says on the job description and what you actually do, it's two completely different things. It's just the reality of the world like that we live in. Nothing we can do about that, pretty much.
You choose to go with. Study how experts structure their code in that stack that you're using. You can do this by looking for large production projects that are built in that stack.
I'm not sure. People, build things in different ways, and people always have different opinions about things, and most of the time they're like valid opinions. There is no perfect way of building things. If it works without bugs, and it's easy to understand, overall, that's good enough. If it's easy to maintain, then that's really good. If it's not, then it's not the best thing in the world. But, if it works and there are not many issues with it, then it's really good already.
Going to their GitHub and seeing how everything's structured. Try to understand why certain patterns are preferred in certain tech stacks. This will set you up for success when you're learning a particular stack. Don't try to just learn stuff at a high level. If you're focusing on a particular stack and building in it for 6 months, you should really get a deep understanding with it. But by the end of that 6 months, you should be comfortable building in the stack and you'll be on your way to becoming a developer. All right, next major bullet point is stay the hell away from shiny objects. Developers are really smart, but we're really easy to distract. And every couple months, there's like...
I'm not sure about the, very smart part, but yeah, let's go with it.
A new front-end framework, there's a new tech stack that comes out, and you have to learn to control yourself and stay away from these shiny objects.
I had a coworker that was always changing, and he's the kind of person that every single time he would try to push that ideology, as in, this is the best thing in the world. We all should start doing this, But in the next month, he was already doing something totally different. But I don't think he ever realized what he was doing in the very first place. So he just kept doing the exact same thing over and over again, which is shiny new thing, go for it, and try to push it towards everyone else. Even though people say, nah, that doesn't make sense. He would still go and do it, so,
I have another video where I talk about staying away from shiny objects, but I'll talk about it a little bit right now. Just know that new frameworks aren't gonna make you a better programmer, and they might make some things easier, but as a beginner, everything's gonna be hard. So if you think that changing frameworks will make things a whole lot easier for you to understand, it's usually not the case. You're still gonna have a big learning curve since you're just getting started, and things are still gonna be complicated. For instance, I think that Laravel is a great framework, and I think that it is one of the simpler frameworks to jump into, but if you're a beginner, you're not going to understand what model view controllers are. You're not going to understand how to set things up in any framework. So whichever framework.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said before, as a beginner, it's like if you don't know how to code in the very first place, or if you're just learning all these extra things, it doesn't make sense at all. It's just losing time. Later on, all of these will make a lot more sense and you'll learn it a lot faster. Possibly will make you quit coding.
you jump into is going to be hard. And switching between frameworks and programming languages is only going to make your learning process take longer. Remember that core programming concepts usually remain the same for the most part.
Exactly.
So that's why you should focus on the fundamentals and the core concepts that you'll be using regularly that will transfer between different technologies and tech stacks and programming languages. New tools are always built on fundamental principles, so make sure that you understand the basics before you start exploring alternatives. Focus on solving problems, not collecting tools for your tool belt. I see a lot of junior developers or beginner developers that have all of these different technologies listed on their portfolio and on their resumes, but I know for a fact that most people who have only been learning for a short amount of time who list a bunch of different technologies and programming languages on their portfolios usually don't even know a single one of them well enough to say that they're proficient with it.
Hey, I used it for 2 days, so I'm really good at it, kind of thing. Yeah.
And they're just kind of collecting different tools that they may have done one tutorial on or watched one YouTube video on to try to feel like they know more than they actually do, and maybe to try to fluff their resume and experience. But it'll show as soon as you start talking to someone who's experienced with a certain technology that you really don't know what you're talking about. So I think it's better to understand one thing really well than understand 100 things just a little bit. Focus on the timeless programming principles. Clean code principles work for any language. Problem-solving skills are universal. Design patterns transcend any trendy tools, and just learn to think like a programmer. And at the end of the day, you just want to stick to your learning path. Figure out the roadmap, figure out what it is you're trying to learn, and just stick to that. The next thing I want to talk about is avoiding tutorial hell. The best way to avoid tutorial hell is to start building right away or as soon as possible. I kind of covered that a little bit in my first bullet point, but I think that tutorial hell deserves its own bullet point because
I did when I first started, I actually did go through a tutorial for a game that, I just wanted to learn how to, and I can tell you I didn't learn pretty much anything. I still played around with things, but a lot of the things that we're going through, it was things that I didn't understand at the time. And therefore, it's like at some point, if you touch something that you don't really understand, it's a lot harder than, if you try to play around with things from the start, as in how are you going to build these and so on, then just follow someone else's thought and logic and then try to play with their thing. It's not the same at all. I think I only did one tutorial that like my tutorial hell kind of thing. It was just a one-time thing. Later on, like I still check tutorials, as in like if I need something very specific, I can go through a tutorial and just find that very specific thing that I need. That's what I use tutorials for nowadays, if anything. But yeah, in terms of tutorials that I have done in the past, it was one-time thing. It was a game, and the thing is, the guy never actually ended the series, so it's like it was incomplete. So it was just, and I didn't really learn much. In all honesty, I didn't really learn much from that experience. So yeah, I would say just do your own thing. Try to find a project that you want to, do and go from there. Try to find out, as in, what is the next thing I need to do to actually get this thing going, and first steps first, obviously, and go from there.
Everyone who starts off learning how to code gets stuck in tutorial hell. I did, you're probably going to. Even when you hear me tell you not to be stuck in tutorial hell and to start building, you're probably still gonna get stuck in tutorial hell, and it's just something that you're gonna have to try to avoid. And the best way to avoid it is to start building as soon as possible and continue to build. Don't go back to tutorials once you've learned the basics. You're gonna feel like you want to, you're probably...
I think the issue is that most people don't know what to build, what they can build and so on. So they just go with examples that they find on the internet and they just tag along and go with it. But yeah, I think that's the main problem with people actually ending up with tutorials. It's not because, they actually want to learn how to do a very specific thing on that tutorial. It's just because they don't know what to do in the very first place, as in what should they, be working on. So it's a complicated situation, I think.
You're gonna think like,
Oh man, you know what? I feel like I don't know this well enough. I need to really go and learn it some more.
and then you're gonna stall your progress by going and learning a bunch of stuff that you probably will end up not having to apply right away. You'll get a bunch of theory that you may store some of, but you'll probably lose most of it because you won't use it. So it's best to just avoid going and trying to learn a whole bunch of stuff and just
And one of the things is that those people, when you're watching a tutorial, they are already coding in a way, well, many times, not always, but many times, in a way that is a little more advanced. Like they might do things that are like one-liners in which you may not even understand exactly what it is doing. And if it was you doing that, it would probably be a lot easier. Like you would probably do the whole logic in a little different way, and you'd do all the steps by yourself instead of doing a one-liner, and you'd actually understand what's happening there. So I don't know, like it is complicated to follow along with other people's code many times, mainly when they are already like experienced within the field. So they will code in one way that it's many times harder for someone new to tag along.
learn through building. If you do end up staying in tutorials too long, try to not stick to the tutorial projects exactly, or build the basic project that they give you and then start making modifications. Start adding your own things to the code. Start reverse engineering the things that you're building, and start to break the tutorial a little bit so that you can figure out how stuff works and how you would add to it if it was a project that you were building on your own. This will bring you a little bit more value out of a tutorial if you do get stuck in one. So you can try to add your own features, but eventually you want to build without these tutorials. You want to take off the training wheels. You don't want to get stuck on that hamster wheel of just watching tutorials.
Yeah, many times when you do tutorials, some of them are like 5 years old. What you're using nowadays may not be exactly the same as what was happening 5 years ago, and things might not match, and you might end up having some issues just because you're already on a newer version of the language and the tools, the IDE and so on that you're using, and things may not be exactly the same, and these might create problems while you're like looking, and it's like I did exactly the same, and somehow things don't work. It is a problem, and it's not a nice problem to have, to be honest.
Tutorials, buying a bunch of Udemy courses, going through a YouTube rabbit hole and watching 100 videos without building anything. Another major thing that I would start doing if I had to start learning how to code right now from scratch all over again, I would start building and learning in public from the very beginning. It would be...
I think that's... I don't disagree, but I don't agree at the same time. Like, it puts extra pressure. It's really nice in terms of if you want visibility. So you are adding an extra thing that you have to do. Like you also have to record. You need to, like show things every day. It's not bad in terms like of keeping you on top of things. Like every day you need to do something so that you can also show. So it's like a chore, but chores are not that nice. It's not as enjoyable as you may think. So coding as you go, whenever you feel like, and so on, in peace, not thinking about, oh, now I need to show this and that and so on. I think peace of mind is also very nice. I don't disagree in terms of like, it is a good way of getting visibility and so on. So, but I don't fully agree either.
One of the first things I did after I completed a few simple courses and I started writing my own code. I'll start committing stuff to GitHub immediately, so you'll have to learn the basics of Git and how GitHub works, but I will start building in public right away. Even if you're not committing your code yet, start talking about this stuff. Share it on Twitter, share it on LinkedIn, share it on YouTube, make a TikTok account, go post about it on Reddit. Just share what you're learning and what you're building in public right away. Share your wins and your struggles. Not only just talk about all the cool stuff that you're learning, but talk about some of the stuff that you're struggling with. Sure, you could do this with a resume and a portfolio and do it by not building in public, but there's something about seeing someone go through the struggle that really resonates with a lot of people who have gone through it themselves. And if I was hiring a
like, if you want to get a job, this is a good way of going on about it. If you're changing from one field to another, I think it's not a bad thing at all, because again, you get visibility and opportunities may come from these things. Like if you don't share, then for sure you will not get the same kind of opportunities, right? It's just like a plus. Although I think the best way to actually go into tech is on whatever job you have at the moment, you try to implement what you're learning into that job, and there is a possibility that you start doing tech stuff within that company, and then, you know, slowly move into a tech role, and later on you just get a job somewhere else because you already have tech experience on a very specific company. I think that's the best way if you're already employed somewhere and you can actually use these skills to improve your job as it is right now, or if you can improve things within the company that you're working. But if you're not, then this is a very good way to actually get opportunities, because they can come from this kind of stuff. If you don't have, you know, this visibility, and if you don't share things, there will be no opportunities for sure, at least on this side of things. Obviously, you still can get a job, but this does help.
Junior developer, and they posted about all the stuff that they were learning, and I was able to see that progression, it would sell me a lot more on that individual than someone that had maybe the same skill and maybe the same set of projects that they've built that didn't post about all that stuff. There's something about being able to see someone learn and grow that makes you want to actually help them and makes you want to hire them. Now, I want to talk about the big boogeyman in the room. I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about ChatGPT and Claude and Cursor and Windsurf and every other AI tool that can help you learn how to code right now. Embrace it. Use it to help you learn, but be careful, because I think that you should still struggle a little bit when you're getting started. They're here to stay. Experienced developers are using it, and I believe that people that are learning how to code should use this stuff. And if I was learning how to code right now, I would definitely be taking advantage of these things, but I could see how it could get me caught up in thinking that I know more than I do by letting it do all the work for me. So you want to make sure that when you start using tools like AI, that you are careful with how you use them, and that you use it in a way to reinforce your learning and to teach you the things that you're not understanding. Try to chat with it naturally. Try to ask questions on things that you want to understand better. Try to use it as a mentor that can help you with the problems that you're stuck on, but don't use it as a developer that can write all the code for you. So what I'm trying to get at is that you want to ask AI for help, but you still want to figure out stuff on your own. Always try to solve the problems first on your own. Spend a little bit of time spinning your wheels, but don't spin your wheels too much. Try to use.
So I personally use ChatGPT. I don't use any of the other AIs. And I use it mainly as a better Google in a way, but the thing is, many times AI gives me crappy answers. They are just wrong or bad. Sometimes I can still make something out of it, but sometimes it just doesn't know. Like, it doesn't know like how to solve a very specific problem, and I do need to do a Google search and so on and try to find out if I can. But yeah, AI is really nice when it works, but when it doesn't work, it's not nice at all. And if you're a beginner, it's harder for you to see like where the issue lies and why it doesn't understand why it's not working and so on. And you don't understand if you did something wrong or not. And many times when I'm reading ChatGPT stuff, I can just see right away, this sounds wrong, and then I can check and it's, yeah, it doesn't work. It's a complicated situation, but it's a very good tool and it should be used. But, you know,
use the 20-minute rule. When I was learning how to code, this is what senior developers would tell me. And when I was helping junior developers, this is what I would tell them, is that you usually want to spend about 20 minutes on a problem on your own before you go and start asking for help. In the 20-minute rule, you can go try to Google stuff. You can go try to find the answer on your own without the help of AI. After about 20 minutes, if you can't figure it out on your own, it's okay to ask for the answer. This will actually help you learn faster. No developer has ever learned by just getting stuck on something for hours. Usually the aha moment, or when somebody explains it, or when they find the answer, is when they learn that thing. Getting stuck is good because it teaches you how to learn and find the answer on your own, but you don't want to get stuck for too long. So follow that 20-minute rule when you're using AI. So learn to solve your own problems if you can. Learn to debug stuff on your own if you can. And if you can't, it's okay to use the tools. Again, I want to keep reinforcing that it's okay to use these tools.
Technically, using the tool is debugging. You are solving a problem, because it's like, if you Google, it's exactly the same thing. It's like you are finding a solution for something. It depends a lot on what is the issue, right? Many times, obviously, you don't know how to do very specific things or what to use and so on. Like, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out something that I don't know how to use that very specific thing that someone else made. I can just go to Google or, AI and tell me, how do I use this thing? It depends a lot on what the issue is. Again, using AI is a way of solving a problem. Like, I wouldn't say that it solves the problem. It's a tool. I'm not sure about this thing that he's saying. Again, I think it depends a lot on what's the issue and how you're going about it.
As long as you feel that you're learning and not just getting the solution handed to you every time, then you're probably using these tools correctly. But just be careful, it's a slippery slope, and next thing you know, you're just pressing tab on cursor and it's auto-completing all the code for you, and then you're just prompting your IDE to write all the code for you, and then you're not learning anything, and you want to avoid that. The next thing is, I'm gonna say, is start building big projects. What happens with a lot of beginners, that happened to me, was that the first few projects that you start building off of tutorials are usually very basic. We're talking like simple things like rock, paper, scissors. We're talking things like to-do list and weather widgets and a Pomodoro timer and consuming an API to show a few little things off of a list. While all of these things are kind of like the building blocks that you need to then build bigger things, building too many of these small things aren't going to give you the same value that you would get from building one large project. I recorded a video.
I think the issue is, again, like, what kind of project are you? Like, people have issues in finding something to do. I'm not sure. Like, many times people don't even know where to start or anything like that as a beginner. I don't know. Like, I think it's important from the very start. I did my own projects, but they were small projects. Later on, I did, pretty complex and big projects. But at the very start, I would still call them, small projects. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that you need to start thinking bigger. The industry is changing and the game has changed. The level of what you need to be able to produce as a junior or a beginner programmer is a lot higher now because of the tools that we have, because of the state of the job market. You kind of have to set the bar a little bit higher for what you can build. And I know that a lot of the things that you build early on, like those little widgets, those little small features, the to-do list, and those APIs that you might make, like, they feel very hard at first, but you want to take what you learned by building those and then start applying it to larger projects. Try to choose a big project that excites you. You can find a project that you like. You can think of something that you want to build or something that you have thought about building that may feel like it's too big. Start building little by little. With large projects, you always start small, and large projects help you break down bigger problems, and you start learning how to actually build real applications. So go find stuff that you want to build, find stuff that excites you and that you would be interested in building.
There were some, I did start some bigger projects at the time, but I didn't finish them. I think that's one of the problems with, if you're a beginner, you're gonna find so many issues along the way that it's like you're most likely not going to complete those projects. And completing projects is very important as well. Like, I'm not saying that I didn't learn a lot of things while doing those big projects, but you're probably not going to finish them, and I think that's also not very nice. I think it's very, very important that you finish the projects that you start as well and see, the end result. So if you can make something really cool that is small, let's put it this way, that you can use on a daily basis, I think that's of great value. Yeah.
Don't just build something for the sake of building it. You could go and do a Twitter clone or a YouTube clone or a Spotify clone, and you can do all of those things, which are good starting points, but eventually you want to build your own stuff because it'll be more fun for you and it'll keep you more engaged, because nobody really wants to build a Twitter clone, but a lot of people have stuff that they do want to build that's a lot more exciting for them. These larger projects will look a lot better on your resume and your portfolio. I think I mentioned it already before. It's better to build a couple really big things than 100 small little things. And when an employer sees you as a junior developer and they see that you have...
I think it depends a lot on, what those small things are. Because some small things, I have done plenty of projects that are like 1 day, 2 days to build and so on, even a few hours. And many of those things are actually things that I do use on a daily basis, or I use every now and then. And I think they are a lot nicer than building one big project that means nothing, or that doesn't have any actual value, or that I don't even use. Like there are some big projects that I have done that I don't use it myself, and while it's nice to have done them, they don't have as much impact on my life as the small ones. I think it all depends on the project itself. It does, like, being a big project does not automatically imply that it's a good project, even for other people.
Have these large applications that you've built from scratch that are your own, it'll give you a lot of talking points. It'll also make you stand out as a junior developer and somebody who's just getting started when you do start applying for jobs. And it's just going to help you understand how to actually build in the real world, which is something that I think a lot of people, when they're learning how to code, miss out on. I know that I did, and I remember jumping into my first large code base and just feeling overwhelmed. And that's going to lead me into the next bullet point that I have. Something that I wish I would have done when I was learning how to code that I would totally do this time around if I had to start over, is that I would start reading and learning how other people's code works. Most of our time as developers is spent reading code. You will read more code than you write, because when it comes to debugging, when it comes to reverse engineering things, when it comes to understanding a code base, and when it comes to understanding what things are doing within code, you're going to be reading a lot of code. And I did not do this when I was first learning, and I wish I would have, because when I got thrown into a large production application that had a bunch of code and a bunch of files and I was completely lost, I felt overwhelmed because I never spent any time reading other people's code. And the great thing is that there's plenty of open source projects that you can dive into and just check out. You can literally clone any open source repo and start walking.
I don't think this is a bad advice at all. Yeah, I ended up having to migrate a lot of projects and, like fix other people's projects and stuff like that. So yeah, you need to understand what's going on these things. So reading other people's code is very important. And if you don't have access because you're a beginner, open source and so on, it's a good way of seeing other people's code and try to understand what is happening there. And if it's a project that you actually like, then you can play with it and try to improve something within it. It's not a bad way of going on about things.
Walking through the code, and you should do this in the tech stack that you're familiar with and trying to get a job in, and you want to start seeing how people write their code, and you want to be able to understand what the code is doing. You also want to be able to use your tools in your IDE or in your text editor that help you navigate through code, and learn to use your debugger and learn how to debug code. This is a big one. You want to learn how to be able to step through functions. You want to learn how to actually...
Yeah, I agree with these 100%. And like I said, Visual Studio is really good with this. It has really good debugger, and learning how to use it is very important. Also to understand how the code actually works, like where it goes, because you can go step by step on it by just clicking F11, I believe, and it will go towards the next step and then the next step and then the next step, and you can see what is like on each variable and everything, like what's the value on that variable and what's happening, if it's going inside of an if statement or not, and all these things. So I think it's really nice to learn this skill and be able to see how everything works.
Navigate in between functions and in between files. You usually do this by using the command or the control key and then clicking on the function if you have things like IntelliSense, or if you have the extensions that allow you to do this in VS Code. This is what you want to do, because you're going to spend a lot of time when you're writing code or when you're working in a big production application by clicking and going into the next function. And when you start debugging code and you start stepping through code, it gets very complicated. And those are all things that I wish I would have done way sooner, because I remember the first time I was told to debug something and I had no idea how to do that. And I've said it, I think, a bunch of times throughout this video, is build, build, build. And when you think you built enough, build some more, and then keep on building. This is where you will learn the most. And I feel like that's kind of been the theme of this video. But honestly, I wish that I would have built more and I would have learned less when I was learning how to code. There is a time for learning. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to need to learn. I know that a lot of stuff that I said in this video might feel like,
yeah, you're telling me not to learn, but I feel like I have to learn.
I get that feeling. I get that you're still going to go and get stuck in tutorial hell. We're all going to do that. That's part of the process. But the best way to become a developer is to build. and continue building and learn through building and keep applying the things that you're learning into the next thing that you're building, and then build on top of those things, build your own little libraries, reuse your components. If you're in the same tech stack, you'll start building a lot of little helper functions and a lot of things that you can reuse in other projects, and just keep building on top of your skill set, and your skill set will get larger, and then your toolbox will become bigger, and you will eventually get a job and be a developer. And then maybe you'll start telling some junior developer that the best way to learn is to start building, and they're going to be like, no way, dude, I need to like spend 6 months just watching videos. I think it's just part of the process. Being self-taught is hard, but at the end of the day, the best way to learn is just to build. All right, with all that said, I really hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and go build something. All right.
Yeah. I think overall, I agree with most things. I was actually expecting something totally different and a lot worse, because usually I don't agree with most of the things that people say on these kind of videos when they go with how I would learn how to code, you know, if I would start over. But on this one, I actually think it was pretty good. I think I agree with most of things. One or another thing I don't, but overall, yeah, I would say yes. I would recommend this video for sure. I think this video was a little too long. There was a lot of repetition on this video. So I think this could have been cut maybe even in half of the time. But overall, it's still, you know, a good video in my opinion. And yeah, I think you should do plenty of the things that he's saying. Yeah. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.